Imagine a beloved TV town reduced to ashes right before your eyes. It wasn't some cinematic coup. It was real emotion detonating on set. Michael Landon strapped TNT to every building in Walnut Grove for the final Little House on the Prairie television movie, The Last Farewell. The intent wasn't cheap shock value. It was a raw reaction to NBC's silent cancellation of the show. Landon poured everything into Walnut Grove over nearly a decade. To him, it wasn't just a backdrop. It was sacred territory. When NBC quietly pulled the plug without so much as a courtesy call, Landon felt betrayed. So, as a final act of defiance, he incinerated the very world he'd built. Melissa Gilbert, who played Laura Ingalls, confessed the experience felt like a longest funeral. This wasn't mindless destruction. The show's cast and crew were shattered. On the day of filming, the explosive scenes unleashed real tears, on camera and off. Buildings that housed shared memories, tears, laughter, friendships, obliterated. Gilbert recalled that when the dust settled, even she was standing on rubble, overwhelmed. The church in Ingalls' little house survived. A sacrifice of story symbolism, not sentiment. But there was something more at stake. Landon was sending a message. He didn't want Walnut Grove repurposed into some random set for some exploitive shoot, or worse. By turning it to ashes, he preserved its purity, its memory. Gilbert confirmed that Landon insisted on the demolition not just as revenge, but to ensure no one else could claim ownership. It was a cinematic excommunication. And the scene delivers. There's no CGI trickery or studio magic. As residents tearfully watch the town crumble, you feel it: grief, rage, tenderness, nostalgia, all detonating in real time. That emotionally charged explosion isn't just a finale, it's a statement carved in fire. So here's the hook. This is an ancient history. When Landon broke silence years later, through rare archival interviews, old audio resurfaced online, or cast memoir revelations, it was clear. The TNT wasn't just a plot device. It was his mic drop at NBC's disrespect. The burning finale was his fury made physical, and it set the tone for what would unravel next. And yet, that wasn't even the full story. Behind the scenes, tensions were simmering. Power plays, tense cast dynamics, unspoken rivalries. All flammable elements that would ignite shortly after the dust settled. For a man who poured his entire soul into Little House on the Prairie, Michael Landon expected, at the very least, a phone call. But when NBC quietly decided to pull the plug on the series, the silence was deafening. No press release, no official goodbye, no courtesy call, just gone. That silence hit harder than any network note ever could. Landon had crafted the Little House from the ground up, writing, directing, producing, and starring in it. It wasn't just a show to him. It was his identity, his passion project, and in many ways, his redemption. To be cast aside without acknowledgement, it felt like betrayal. Melissa Gilbert later revealed in interviews that Landon was furious, not in a public tantrum sort of way, but something deeper, more personal. She said he was so angry that NBC never even called to say thank you. The bitterness lingered, not because the show ended, that's TV, but because of how it ended. No closure, no dignity. EW.com. You have to understand Landon wasn't just a star. He was the heart of Little House. He'd fought to keep it on air through ratings dips, network reshuffles, and industry politics. He modernized family TV while still giving it that homespun moral core. And NBC didn't even have the decency to say goodbye. That decision turned a disappointed man into a man on a mission. He wasn't going to go out quietly. That's part why the final TV movie, The Last Farewell, felt less like a farewell and more like a revenge story. Not just for Charles Ingalls, but for Landon himself. The entire destruction of Walnut Grove, while symbolic in story, doubled as a scorched earth message to the network. If I can't have this, no one will. And the fans? They were stunned. 1 week, the show was chugging along. The next, the town was in flames and the credits rolled forever. No announcement, no hype, Just one final blast, and it was over. Behind the scenes, some crew members even hinted that Landon knew months before the official cancellation, but was waiting, hoping that NBC would reconsider. Maybe he thought loyalty would count for something. After all, Landon had been with NBC since his Bonanza days. He was their golden boy, until he wasn't. This wasn't just a lost show, it was a public snub. And that kind of quiet cut can change a person. It certainly changed Landon. In later interviews, even his tone shifted. He spoke less like the optimistic Pa Ingalls we knew and more like a man who had seen too much of the industry's dark side. And yet, this public betrayal was just one part of a much larger story. Because of the silence from NBC hurt, what Landon was doing behind the scenes was beginning to raise even more eyebrows. By the time Little House on the Prairie reached its peak, Michael Landon wasn't just a star. He was the emperor of a kingdom he'd created from scratch. While most actors were content with their lines and camera marks, Landon was writing scripts, directing episodes, producing entire seasons, and overseeing every creative decision. On set, what Landon said went, it wasn't a collaborative democracy, it was his world. At first, that kind of control seemed like genius. Landon had a vision, a family-friendly series with moral weight, emotional stories, and beautiful landscapes. And it worked. Ratings soared. Critics praised its depth. Viewers wrote letters saying it changed their lives. But behind the curtain, Landon's grip on the show was iron-tight. And not everyone thrived under it. He started borrowing heavily from his Bonanza playbook. Some entire Little House episodes were practically beat-for-beat remakes of his earlier Western scripts. It wasn't laziness, it was familiarity. Landon knew what worked. He was a master at emotional manipulation and storytelling, and he repackaged it with a Prairie twist. But some insiders whispered that he was recycling material just to maintain his dominance over the writing room. Other actors, especially longtime cast members, began to notice how hard it was to get their own ideas through. One former crew member reportedly said, Michael didn't just want to run the show, he wanted to own every breath in it. Even Melissa Gilbert, who adored him as a mentor and father figure, admitted he was intimidating when it came to creative control. Directors were often just there in name. Landon was the one calling the shots, setting up shots, choosing performances. Writers who tried to steer the narrative in new directions often found their drafts rewritten or trashed. It was Landon's vision, or no vision at all. And that kind of all-powerful presence began to create friction. Some guest stars felt micromanaged. Others overshadowed. Karen Grassel, who played Caroline Ingalls, later spoke out about feeling silenced and dismissed when she tried to negotiate for better pay. She wasn't just underpaid, she was frozen out. In her memoir, she wrote that Landon's response was chilly and punishing. His control wasn't just about creativity. It extended to contracts, respect, and the entire hierarchy on set. But there's more. Some background actors claim Landon could be controlling even in casual interactions, demanding silence when walking on set, correcting people's lines mid-scene, or shutting down conversations he didn't approve of. It wasn't explosive or cruel, but cold, calculated, and absolute. From the outside, he looked like the dream leader, charismatic, funny, and beloved. But inside the studio walls, Landon was a force you didn't question. His command created an iconic show, but at what cost? And yet, for all his control on set, there were parts of his life he couldn't script. Because as the cameras rolled, whispers of his darker behavior started leaking into public view. Behavior that would forever complicate his legacy. The man millions adored as Charles Ingalls was far from the warm, perfect father figure when the cameras stopped rolling. Behind the scenes of Little House on the Prairie, Michael Landon's charm could quickly give way to something darker and abrasive, sometimes downright hostile personality, fueled by alcohol and control. Karen Grassel, who portrayed Caroline Ingalls, opened up years later about Landon's difficult side. She described moments of bullying and crude behavior that weren't part of the public persona. It wasn't just the occasional rough joke. Some crew and cast members recall Landon making deeply inappropriate comments, especially toward women. There's a chilling contrast between his on-screen kindness and his off-screen coldness. Rumors started to swirl, and years later, these whispers found homes on platforms like Reddit, where longtime fans and former insiders shared candid stories. One user claimed, "He was drunk almost all the time on set, and that made him unpredictable." Another mentioned episodes of sexist and rude behavior that unsettled the entire cast. Drinking was an open secret. Landon's boozy haze sometimes leaked into work hours, leading to mood swings and outbursts that made the set tense. While he was celebrated for his professionalism in public, those close to production saw a man struggling to keep control, both of the show and himself. This complicated Landon's relationships. Melissa Gilbert remembers moments when Landon's temper flared, though she also admired his mentorship. Others were less lucky. Karen Grassel's accounts paint a picture of someone who felt sidelined and dismissed, not just professionally, but personally. In her memoir, she recalls a particular incident when Landon made a crude joke at her expense during a read-through, leaving her humiliated. Behind the scenes, it wasn't just the cast who felt the pressure. Crew members also spoke of an environment where Landon's moods dictated the tone. Set designers, makeup artists, and cameramen sometimes found themselves tiptoeing around him, fearful of sparking his ire. There's a tragic irony here. The man who gave so many families a comforting image of love and unity was wrestling with his own demons, wounds that often express themselves as harshness. It's hard to reconcile the Pa Ingalls we know with a man who some described as unpredictable and difficult. And yet, the troubling stories didn't stop there. There were even more unsettling rumors bubbling just beneath the surface. Affairs and scandals that added layers of controversy to Landon's complicated legacy. What happened next would shock many fans who only knew him as their favorite TV dad. Michael Landon's off-camera life was far more complicated than the wholesome image he projected on screen. For years, rumors swirled about his tangled personal relationships, stories that painted a picture of a man who struggled to keep his private life private, despite his status as TV's most beloved father figure. Several cast members and crew whispered about Landon's rumored affairs during the height of Little House on the Prairie. While he was married to his third wife, Cindy Clerico, speculation suggested that Landon's romantic life was anything but stable behind closed doors. These weren't just fleeting moments. Some insiders hinted at long-term liaisons with people on set and beyond. The secrecy only added fuel to the fire. Melissa Gilbert, who was close to Landon, mentioned that while he was a mentor and guide, there were times when his behavior felt confusing, even troubling. Fans who dug deeper uncovered interviews and biographies hinting at Landon's struggle to juggle fame, family, and personal desires, all under the glare of public scrutiny. But it wasn't just the affairs. There were whispers about a darker side involving substance use. While Landon's drinking was somewhat an open secret, some accounts suggested he occasionally crossed a line, taking risks that worried friends and family. None of this was publicly confirmed in detail, but the pattern was hard to ignore. What makes this all the more heartbreaking is how carefully Landon tried to maintain the perfect image. Publicly, he remained the doting husband and devoted father. Behind the scenes, he was wrestling with private turmoil that few outsiders saw. Fans were shocked to learn that even as Landon was burning down Walnut Grove on screen, he was dealing with fires in his personal life. Fires that would only grow hotter in the years after the show ended. And just when you thought the story couldn't get any more complicated, there was one last twist. Landon's health started to decline rapidly. How he faced this final chapter, without the cameras, the scripts, or the applause, would reveal the man behind the myth in a way no episode ever could. As the camera stopped rolling on Little House on the Prairie, Michael Landon's toughest role wasn't on screen. It was the battle he fought behind closed doors. By the early 1990s, the vibrant man who once lit up living rooms across America was facing a brutal private war, a diagnosis that would change everything. Landon was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, a disease known for its rapid and relentless progression. For someone so used to controlling every detail on set, This was a battle he couldn't direct or script. He faced the illness with a mix of bravery and frustration, keeping much of his suffering private while continuing to work as long as he could. His family and close friends recall a man determined to maintain dignity despite the pain. Yet, the weight of the diagnosis was heavy. Landon's public image as the ever-cheerful Pingles masked the deep struggle he endured daily. The man who had once blown up Walnut Grove in a fiery finale was now grappling with an internal blaze. During this period, Landon made a conscious choice to keep his illness out of the spotlight. Unlike many celebrities today who openly share their health battles, Landon stayed quiet, protecting his family and preserving his privacy. This silence left fans shocked when news of his death in 1991 suddenly surfaced. But even in his final days, Landon's resilience shone through. He pushed to complete projects and spend time with those he loved. His wife, Cindy, later revealed the heartbreaking moments of his decline, but also the strength he showed against overwhelming odds. There's a haunting irony here. The man who destroyed Walnut Grove to make a statement ended his life quietly, away from the cameras, without fanfare. His passing was sudden and devastating. Not the grand exit some might have expected from Hollywood's consummate storyteller. Yet, even after his death, Landon's legacy remains complicated. Fans celebrate his contributions to television and family storytelling, while the darker truths about his personal struggles and on-set behavior continue to surface. The question that lingers now is this: how do we reconcile the beloved TV dad with the flawed man behind scenes? And more importantly, what lessons can we learn from a life lived in the spotlight, marked by passion, pain, and a relentless quest of control? Michael Landon's story is anything but simple. For decades, millions saw him as a comforting Pa Ingalls, the gentle guide through life's storms. But beneath that warm smile was a man wrestling with control, pain, and contradictions. He was a creative powerhouse who shaped one of television's most beloved shows. But he was also a flawed human being, struggling privately with demons few could see. His decision to burn down Walnut Grove wasn't just a dramatic finale for Little House on the Prairie. It was a bold statement against the very industry that had pushed him aside without a word. His behind-the-scenes behavior, the rumors of bullying, substance struggles, and complicated personal relationships add layers to a legacy that isn't easily categorized. Landon's final battle with illness and the quiet dignity he showed in the face of mortality reveal a man who, despite all his power and fame, was vulnerable, just like the characters he brought to life. This duality, the beloved icon and the troubled man, makes his story deeply human and relatable. What makes Michael Landon unforgettable isn't just his roles on screen, but the complexity behind the scenes. It's a reminder that legends are often shaped by contradictions, and the truth is rarely black and white. So the next time you watch Little House on the Prairie, remember there's more to the story than the prairie dust and gentle lessons. There's a man who lived fiercely, loved deeply, and struggled fiercely to hold on to his creation and himself. If this story surprised you or made you see Landon in a new light, drop a comment below. What part shocked you the most? And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories behind your favorite shows and stars. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.